So my first duology, Wings of Ebony and Ashes of Gold, this is a completed duology. So this is like the entire story. I know some people like to wait till all the books come out before they start reading. So you can let this one keep you up all night and immediately lose sleep another night reading the sequel, because they're both out. And Wings of Ebony follows Rue, who is a Black teen from an inner city neighborhood that's full of sort of drugs and violence and crime. After her mother's murder, she's taken away from the place where she grew up from her estranged father, who she never knew. And he takes her to this island off the coast of Africa where everyone has magic. The other thing that's kind of odd about this island is that no one looks like her. Like only her and her dad are the only two that kind of look the same. Everyone else looks different. They have this like grayish skin tone. And so she feels very isolated there. She's also trying to grieve her mother. And so she just wants to be home. And she also doesn't know her father at all, never met the man. So there's a lot of sort of grief and like animosity she has to work through with him, because her mom's life was very hard, raising her as a single mom. And so she's sort of grappling with all of this. When the book opens, she decides to sneak away from that island because she has a sister who did not get taken because her sister has a different dad. So her sister went to go live with her dad, but she misses her. So on the anniversary of her mother's death, the book opens with Ruth sneaking back to Houston, which is where the book is set, to leave her sister, her younger sister, a little gift, just to say, I remember mom too, and I love you, and I hope you're okay. But her plan is just to sneak there and sneak back, not even let her sister see her, because she doesn't want questions. She doesn't know how to answer questions like, well, where have you been? I mean, how do you explain that? I've been on an island with magical people. So it's easier if I just like lurk in the shadows, leave her a gift from me, and disappear. That doesn't work. It goes completely sideways. And so the book follows Rue dealing with the consequences of breaking that rule, but feeling justified in breaking that rule because she loves her sister. And it takes her on a journey of discovering her ancestors' magic and recognizing the sort of connection that she has to her ancestors' magic and how she can use that to actually protect her sister and her community back home.
Gotcha. So when you're, got all kinds of questions. I guess the most obvious place to start is when you're writing middle grade now versus YA. What are the biggest differences in the choices you make, the style that you write with, and also your approach? I mean, does it take you 18 days to write a YA? How does your process change?
So my process is very different. Now, some of that is just because I cut my teeth on Wings of Ebony. That was my first book. I wrote it in 35 days. And this draft, this draft, for those of you who are not viewing but listening, this draft, I'm holding the finished book. This draft is the 19th draft of that book that I wrote in 35 days. So in a lot of ways, you know, my process has had to evolve. The sequel to Wings of Ebony took me 3 drafts to get it from first draft to bookshelf. And so part of it is just sort of the natural evolution of writing. I mean, you're an author, you get that. I feel like we just, our books continue to get better. They always say your first book is the worst one you'll ever write. And I believe that, at least for me, that was true. So to some degree, the differences now in my process are because of that. But then also why approaching YA and approaching middle grade are different, because the voice to me is completely different, and just the heart of the story. So the tone, for example, in Wings of Ebony, I was wanting a gritty tone. I wanted the book to feel very gritty and real, very deeply grounded in the contemporary. And that's something you see in both my books. A Taste of Magic is very grounded in the real world. But I wanted A Taste of Magic to feel like what eating a chocolate chip cookie looks like or feels like. Like, that's what I wanted to capture in this book. That warmth, that just like you want to hug the book where you finish, when you finish, like I wanted my readers to laugh out loud. I wanted my readers to be laughing so hard the parents like, what is happening on the pages of this book? This is what my kids do when they read Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I'm like, that is fantastic writing. My kids are cracking up. Like, wait, I want to read Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And all of a sudden it's fostering this love of learning and literacy, which is ultimately what I'm most passionate about, is like getting kids in books. So that they love to read. I was a teacher, like I told you before. And so I want to trick kids into loving books. And so one way I do that in middle grade is through humor. And so the voices were very different when writing YA and middle grade. The plot is a lot simpler. I don't have as many plot points. I mean, these books are actually similar in length, interestingly, but typically the middle grade that I read is shorter than the YA that I read. Like in YA Fantasy, my new series, that book is clocking at like 500 pages right now. because the world is so big and there's just a lot happening. Whereas in Kiana's story, I wanted to keep it simpler, but that doesn't mean that we're lacking a complexity or a character depth. I just wanted to focus in on the story very closely on like friendship and family magic and like love and like all of these like warm, giddy feelings. And so the outlining process is pretty similar. I just spend a lot more time refining before I write when I'm getting into YA because there's so many more plot threads to braid together.
So for middle grade, you want a more focused, this is what the story is, and we're doing this, and obviously there's going to be a larger series, and all of this happening, but you want that initial emotion. You want it to feel like the taste of the cookie.
Yes.
I know you've got the three littles there. I wonder if that's a factor also, because I don't know if they're able to read Wings of Ebony.
No, they haven't. They haven't, not yet. A little bit. They get spooked out just by watching like cartoon dinosaurs. So they're probably not ready for Wings of Ebony. But it's a more mature book, depending on what kids are accustomed to reading. A Taste of Magic is just sweet and fun and lighthearted, but there's still like things in there that I'm talking about gentrification and redistricting and how these affect communities. I'm talking about owning a home and what that means to a family for generational wealth. Like there are some real themes in these books, and in each book in the series, I have a theme that I want to tackle that's more of a real world theme, because I think it makes it, again, my teacher hat slipping on, I think it makes it very relevant and teachable when you can take something that's fun and exciting, and then also, because then you have a kid's attention, right? They're in the story, they're excited, they're laughing, they're paying attention, and then you can teach them something because you have their ear. So that's sort of my approach to middle grade, which is a little different from my approach to YA.
Although with Wings of Ebony, without spoiling, I mean, there are gods who are poisoning the community, right?
Yes.
Which, so not quite gentrification exactly, but not that.
yeah, not that exactly.
So when obviously you think that, I'm assuming that's a popular theme that we can look forward to maybe recurring in the real world, but also your novels.
Unfortunately, in the real world.